I've posted about my companion, Nathaniel. Most of my experiences are relatively minor and even humorous, especially involving him. I've had a few kinda scary ones that I was able to get myself through in the moment by remembering that they can't hurt me. But there was one entity that almost changed my mind about that. I was not in a good relationship at all when I briefly married. He had all sorts of issues with violence and drug use, which was bad enough to deal with. But he also began practicing Santeria there at the end, and not in a positive way. He did it strictly to cause things to happen, to hurt people. The atmosphere in the house got very bad, very fast. It was thick and oppressive. It felt heavy in there and dark, and it was literally hard to breathe. I was unable to use my faith to keep most of it from affecting me, but the longer it went on, the harder that became to do. One night, as I was sleeping, I was violently awakened by the bed dipping down. It felt like a large dog of some sort was coming towards me, and I could feel the specific way a dog moves. One foot forward, then the back foot following. I was terrified, but right as it got up to me in the hall, a wind chime began to ring. The wind chime is significant because it hangs like a way to cut the light on the right foot tall ceiling fan. The ceiling fan was loose and loud, but it never disturbed the wind chime, and the chime didn't hang far enough to hit it accidentally with your head, passing under, unless you reached up to pull it. My companion's spirit liked to play with this wind chime occasionally, and he knew I understood it as a way of saying he's there, so I'd always greet him when he did it. I don't know what was coming toward me that night, but I do know that Nathaniel did protect me. It was gone as soon as that chime rang, and I'd always felt like Nathaniel protects me on some level. I grew to hate that house and was petrified to be in it. When we moved, the next owners had it torn down, and I'm not surprised at that at all. Something got into that house and fed off the anger and fear and negativity, and it was absolutely something very bad. My dad is also a believer in ghosts. Ghosts being real as a belief is just generally accepted in my family and not questioned. I used to go and visit my dad. I really hated being over there, so I always super aware of everything going on. I slept on a love seat in the living room over there, fully dressed, including my shoes. One night, everyone had gone or was getting ready to go to bed. My siblings were asleep in their rooms. I was on the couch with Nick at night playing on the TV, and my stepmom and dad were in their room with the door open. Suddenly, there were very loud, measured footsteps beginning from the foot of the love seats and going down the hall toward their room, where the light suddenly flipped on. The footsteps were distinctive. If you've ever heard cowboy boots on a wood or uncarpeted floor, you know the telltale clink and click they make with the accompanying thump. I knew immediately what it was, since I was in the living room alone and there was nothing in the hall. I could see all the way down it. My love seat was on the same wall. I just shut my eyes tight and listened, because it was none of my business what that ghost had going on. But I heard my dad loudly ask my stepmom if she cut that light on, and she paused a second and sounded shocked, but she said no. I heard the bed springs dip when he got out of bed, and heard his feet hit the floor to walk to the light by the door and cut it off. Later, after I confirmed I heard it, he said that as a child, his grandfather would come down the hall in his boots and cut the lights on to let the kids know it was time for bed. They moved eventually. Their new house was no less haunted, but this spirit was evil. Apparently, it was an old woman that had either died in the house or helped her husband stop living. Maybe both. She hated women in certain parts of the house. In one bedroom, if you went in there, she'd slam the door and lock you in. In the bathroom, you could feel someone watching you malevolently. One night, again I was on the couch. I heard her come into the kitchen behind me. She flipped the light on and I told her, listen, if you want the light to keep it on, I won't cut it off, but you aren't going to mess with me. She didn't bother me. They took pictures of us there, and in one there's a clear face of a man in a glass door reflection. In many pictures, I'm surrounded by orbs, but only if I'm alone. If anyone comes into the frame with me, they disappear. I'm 29 years old, and the events I'm about to detail began to take place shortly before I was born, and are unanimously agreed upon as fact in my family, which is saying a lot since most of us are estranged from each other and no longer speak. I was a surprise baby for my mother. She had several birth control implants in her arm at the time she got pregnant with me, and at the time she was living in a sister's house with her since she had cheated on her husband with my father and needed somewhere to stay. Her room was at one end of the house and her sisters were at the other. My mother had a large dog, part pit, part Cthulhu, that stayed in her room, and he was not good with strangers at all. It started off small, of course, as it does. Water running, taps being cut on and off, the toilet would flush by itself. My mother is very intuitive and not at all frightened by spirits, so when it became apparent that's what this was, she gave him a name. He was called Nathaniel. Her sister was an early believer, as she was in the house as well, and so was my father. The land my aunt's house was on belonged to my mother, and was a really choice piece of property with many acres. People tried to approach her about selling it numerous times. One particular member example was when my mom, M, Aunt A, and Dad D were all present. A preacher was interested in the property and he was invited into the house. My family wasn't interested in selling, but they do like to mess with people, and they told him about Nathaniel to deter him, but he was skeptical, which is why they asked him in. As he was making his pitch to M, the doorknob to her bedroom began to turn, and the dog got agitated and started trying to bite the knob. This went on for a few minutes before the preacher stopped talking and apologized, and asked if he was disturbing anyone. M laughed and said there was no one in the room. He didn't believe her, so she opened the door and showed him. I'm told he lit out the house like his pants were on fire. By this time, the whole family knows about Nathaniel, and I'm born and the events ramp up. He loved to play with my toys and would do so for hours, even if they removed the batteries. When my grandfather died and the family gathered at A's house for the wake, a toy cell phone without batteries began to play Amazing Grace, and they wrapped it in a towel and put it at the other end of the house under the sink, but the song got louder and louder until it finished. M and D split up, and D got married, and when I would go visit, Nathaniel would go with me. My stepmom said he'd roll the windows up and down in the car and play with the radio. He loved crayons, and he'd constantly leave them on the floor, and my D got mad at her for leaving them out, until she said it wasn't her, and they told him it was fine to play with them as long as he put them back. They were never out again. Once, a dog was barking too loud for him over there, and he threw a plate of chicken bones at the wall. They said I would have conversations with them, but when they tried to sneak in to see who I was talking to, even with my back to them, I'd wave up and say bye. Nathaniel hates being told he isn't real, and he'll act up if you do. When I was 15, my best friend said he wasn't real, and she had her mom call me later that night to tell him to come home since he wouldn't leave the lights or the TV alone at their house. He calmed down a lot, but he's still around. He hides stuff and you have to ask him nicely for it back. M says he's my guardian angel. He's attached to me though. I know that for sure. One night, I had a friend stay over and it was in the middle of the night. He woke me up by saying my name very softly, but he sounded terrified. I was angry because I just went to sleep and sarcastically said, "What?" Well, he said next to us, "The door." I looked at my door into the hallway and there was a black shadowy figure as tall and wide as the door. We have had security systems as long as I can remember, and I'm 5'11" now, and the tallest in my family. It didn't look human. It was oddly shaped and had no actual features besides the outline of the person, and it was immensely dark. Keep in mind, there was a light on in my room on the other side. We watched it for 15 to 20 seconds. It was there for what felt to us an eternity. It felt like it was sucking the energy out of the room, and neither of us could move. Then, without notice, after standing still for maybe 15 seconds, it shot back ridiculously fast, but it didn't turn around like a human. The best way I can describe it was it flew away, going about 15 feet in maybe 1 to 2 seconds and then disappearing. I then ran and turned the main light on that was next to the door. This wasn't the first time something happened to me, but it was the first time someone else was with me and saw it too. I calmed him down the rest of the night and said I would talk to my parents in private about it. This also wasn't the last thing to happen to me or my family. I'm from Dhaka, Bangladesh, and I'm currently living in Toronto. The experiences I'm about to share have happened in Dhaka. We live in an apartment in a pretty opulent part of the city. The apartment is approximately 3,000 square foot. It has a long hallway that's surrounded by the 3 bedrooms. My mum and dad live in the furthest room from the main door of the apartment, and right across them lives my sister. My room is the closest to the main door, across from the living room. So the hallway opens up into a balcony that has a complete glass wall with sliding doors on it. I'll try to edit later and add a picture of the apartment if that helps you visualize it. We live on the 4th floor, and at night it becomes almost dead silent, since the neighborhood we live isn't close to a busy street. Now, I want to state that I do believe in the paranormal, but try to always debunk stuff logically. My parents usually go to bed around 11 or 12, and they sleep soon after. The same goes for my sister. I usually stay up at night and watch shows unless I'm very tired. So the apartment is mostly tiled, except for the bedrooms that have wooden flooring. More like wooden panels on top of the concrete, so when you walk across it, there's a very distinctive creak to it. The doors to the bedrooms also have mirrors on them, and right across my door is my bed, and on the other side, there's a window. There aren't many tall buildings around me, so you can clearly see the moonlight through the windows, or any streetlights that are outside. It doesn't get pitch dark at night, so even if all the lights are off, you can still pretty much see everything inside the room. So summer of 2018, I went back during my break from university. Jet lag and the already present dismal sleeping pattern meant I pretty much stayed up all night. So one night, I was lying down on bed fiddling around with my phone. I think it was somewhere around 2:30 or 3 a.m. when I heard the sound of wind chimes outside. We have wind chimes on top of the curtain railings that are in front of the glass door to the balcony, but we keep the curtains closed at night. Living in that apartment for the better part of my life, I could tell exactly which wind chime it was just from the sound. Initially, I thought it was probably my dad grabbing a smoke. But then I looked at the time, and it's a weird time for him to do that, as he's a pretty heavy sleeper, and I didn't hear their door open or close. I tried to concentrate more, and I could hear the faint noises of footsteps. Now, I know exactly what the footsteps of my mom, dad, and sister sound like, and I couldn't recognize these steps. They weren't heavy, but neither were they dainty. I could clearly make out that it was coming towards my room, and I instinctively looked at my door to see if the light was coming from under it. I hear footsteps approaching and stop right in front of my room. I wait for around 30 seconds, and then I hear 3 sharp knocks on my door. I remember feeling a sense of dread, since if anyone was in my family, the knocks would be followed by my name, and no one in my family would knock that politely. I thought I was hallucinating and decided to concentrate more. I looked at the mirrors on the door and focused on the light being reflected from it. I didn't reply to the knocks, as something inside me told me not to answer. Sure as hell, about another 30 seconds or a minute later, I hear 3 more knocks, louder than before, and I clearly saw the reflection of the light vibrate. This scared me a lot, and I pulled the blanket over me and started praying. After a while, I heard footsteps receding from my room and the eventual chime of the wind chime. I couldn't sleep at all, and decided to stay up till the Far Adhan, a Muslim call to prayer from the mosque. I told my parents about it, and they didn't believe me. My sister too told me she never experienced anything of the sort. Ever since that incident, I've been visibly disturbed. I've never had a paranormal experience before, save a few shadow people sightings, which I just brush off as not concrete. I made it a habit to fall asleep early, or if I couldn't sleep, I'd stay awake till the far adan. The next few nights, nothing happened, so I brushed it off the entire incident as either a lucid dream or a hallucination. After about 3 nights of nothingness, I was back to my regular business. Same as the first night, I heard the chimes, the footsteps, and the knocks. Only this time, the knocks were louder, to the point that I clearly saw the whole door shake. That night, I ended up staying awake till the adhan again. If you're wondering what the significance of the adhan is, in our faith, we believe in jinns, which is comparable to demons. It's said that jinns are active at night and try to mess with people. Only after the Fajr Adhan do they leave you alone, so that was my thinking. The third incident is by far the worst for me. Same as the other 2 times, I heard the wind chimes, the footsteps, and the knocks. Just like the other 2 days, I faced away from the door and pulled my blanket on top of me. But unlike the other days, it didn't stop at the knocks. After the knocks, I heard the creak of my floor. It was so distinct that I was sure someone just stepped on the wooden panels. It takes about 3 steps from the door to the edge of my bed, and I heard 3 exact creaks, getting louder with every step. I was sweating under my blankets and reciting every prayer I could think of at the moment. I made it a point to not look behind me, as I've heard you shouldn't look at a jinn directly, or else they'll attack you. After the creaks, I felt the weight of my bed shift as if someone sat on the bed. We had those European-style beds with a huge mattress on top of it, so it takes some weight to deform them. It doesn't just deform by itself. I had the AC on, so the room was cold as, but since I had the blanket on top of me, it was pretty warm inside. As soon as the weight shifted on my bed, I felt a chill down my entire back, as if someone just put a block of ice my size against my back. I didn't hear anything. In fact, I didn't want to hear anything. I felt as if someone was breathing down my neck. This is what haunts me. I can explain away everything to a certain degree, but not the breathing. Then, as soon as it happened, it stopped. Everything went back to normal. I didn't move from that position till the adhan and fell asleep that way. Nothing of that sort happened to me after that. I've been back home almost every summer after that. Fast forward to August of 2021. I was back home and on a video call with my girlfriend. I left her on the phone and went to the bathroom. My bathroom isn't attached to my room. You have to go outside the door to go to the bathroom. I came back and saw that the light and AC in my room were turned off. As soon as I turned the light back on, my girlfriend started calling me. I picked up my phone and she was hysterical. She asked if I came into my room or not, and I said no. She told me she saw the light go off and heard someone walking around in my room. That scared the shit out of me. It wasn't a circuit breaker, as the bathroom light is also on the same circuit as the electrical outlets in my room, so my bathroom light would have gone out too. It also wasn't anyone in my family, as I would have heard them come towards my room. My bathroom door is right beside my bedroom door. As of now, these are the only things that have happened to me. As far as I know, none of my families have ever witnessed or experienced anything of that sort. A few years ago, I was sitting alone in my room. The door was closed and locked, as I have a weird habit of always locking a door behind me, and both of my brothers were out at friends' houses. The only other people that were home were my parents, who were both watching a movie downstairs. I heard footsteps outside of my door in the hallway. I also heard doors opening and closing. I thought nothing of it, as I just assumed that one of my brothers got home, or my parents were coming upstairs. The strange part was I never heard footsteps of someone coming up or downstairs, which I would normally hear as my room sits near the stairs. A few minutes went by and I heard nothing. Then I heard my doorknob move slightly, as if someone was putting their hand on it. I looked over at the doors, and as I looked, the doorknob turned. The door opened a few inches and then slammed shut. This is especially strange because, as I said before, my door was locked and only could have been opened from the inside. I turned on my lamp on my nightstand and sat up. I then texted my dad and asked him if he had opened my door. He said he hadn't and came upstairs. I followed him as he checked every room in the hallway, as we were scared that someone had broken into the house, but he found nothing. This wasn't the first paranormal experience that me or even my brothers have had in this house, but it was certainly the one that stood out the most. On another occasion, my brother was in his room and had the door wide open. It then slammed shut. Another time, I was home alone. I took a shower, and when I returned to my room, every drawer of my dresser was open and nearly all my clothes were strewn out across the floor. Another time, I was lying in bed. I heard a whisper in my ear and I felt something touch my shoulder. When I looked over, my Alexa started playing this creepy slow music. I've also noticed things disappearing and reappearing afterwards in wide open places that I had already checked, such as shoes, my phone, my wallet, etc. Another time, I was driving home and saw a figure standing in the upstairs window that faces the road. I was very reluctant to go inside after that. At the most recent encounter, the hallway light was off and my brother had his door cracked open. Through the crack, there was a very brief and pinpointed white flash, unlike any kind of camera or phone flash, or any lights we have in the house. As scary as these experiences can be, it's apparent that whatever is in our house isn't violent, but just likes to fuck around with us. When my boyfriend and I started dating, he told me about a shadow man he and his mum see from time to time out of the corner of their eye in their house. At first, I thought they were joking around trying to scare me, as I'm a bit of a scaredy cat. But one night, I was in the living room waiting for him to come and sit to watch movies with me, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw a tall and dark figure walking directly into his mum's room from the toilet. His mum had been asleep and her door was shut. Also, the reason I could see this was because behind their couch is a hallway leading to the bedroom/bathroom. Used to be an opening into the living room, but they put the couch there. Another experience was one night when he was asleep. I was laying in bed scrolling through Reddit on my phone. His door started to rattle. He had a screwdriver as a handle at the time as he'd broken off a few times. And after 2 or 3 times, the screwdriver just flew out of the door, and pretty far from the door too. I ended up putting my phone off and going to sleep as I was a bit too scared to witness anything else. Another time was after we had a small party/get-together with friends. All our friends slept over in different rooms. I was lying awake and suddenly started to hear one of my friends calling my name in a loud whisper. I started whispering her name loudly and eventually sent her a text asking if she had been calling me. The next morning I asked her about it and she said she had passed out by that time. The last one that I recall is one night when my boyfriend and I finished watching movies and were on our way to bed. I needed to go back to the living room for medicine or something and walked in, but the light was off. I remember thinking to myself, you'd be able to see if there was more light, but we're too lazy, aren't we? And then the light just went on. I at first thought it was my boyfriend, but I hadn't heard a click for the switch, so I was extremely confused, but took my time. I went back to the room and realised he'd been cozy in bed the whole time and just shut the door and locked it, a little bit terrified. We've also heard little taps on his bedroom floor at night from time to time if the TV in his room isn't on, almost like a small dog walking around on the tiles. When we heard it, there were 2 big dogs that slept outside the house, not inside. When I was in high school, I played trumpet in our school's marching band. We often travelled around the state, Missouri, to completing competitions. So my senior year, which was in 2013, We were playing at a competition held in Columbia, Missouri, at Mizzou University. Our school had made it to the finals, but we were going to be the last band to perform. This meant that by the time we were warming up to go on, it was nearly 10 p.m. Our band had a tradition of praying before every show. For those of us that aren't religious, we were allowed to sit out the prayer and just be respectfully quiet. My friend, I'll just refer him to as Matt, not his real name obviously, and I were two of those who always sat it out. While everyone was praying, suddenly Matt tapped me on the shoulder and pointed up into the sky. It was clear. I want to say early November nights. I'm not completely certain on that. Anyway, when I looked up, I saw what he was pointing at. It was a set of 3 very dull, sort of blurry lights in a fixed triangle formation. It flew over us quietly, making no noise. As I watched it move in a, I believe, southwestern direction, I could actually make out a black silhouette itself in the shape of a triangle, the dull lights positioned at each corner. The lights never flashed, just stayed the same dull brightness and kind of greyish colour. After about 30 seconds, it was out of sight, since we didn't catch it until it was directly overhead. Of course, me and Matty definitely made it a talking point on the bus ride home. At the time I thought it was weird, but didn't think much of it. Fast forward to July of 2013, Matt and I had graduated in May, and we were wanting to hang out before starting college in August. We decided to go camping at Table Rock Lake, which is a man-made lake in southwestern Missouri, near the Arkansas border. I think in total there were 4 people. Myself, Matt and his girlfriend, and another friend of ours. It was the second night of camping, and we decided to go for a swim at around 2 a.m. We didn't go out far, mostly just stayed near the shore. About an hour goes by, and I'm looking at the sky. It was a very clear night, and the light pollution was a lot less out here than in the city that we lived in, so the stars were beautiful. Suddenly, I see it again. The same object I had seen months prior in Columbia. For reference, Columbia is over 200 miles from where we were at. Again, it had the same 3 dull lights in a triangle formation, still just as silent. I pointed it out, and our group watched it as it flew over. Not sure of the direction this time though. As soon as it was overhead though, the waves in the lake picked up. The wake was as if a large boat was speeding past, but of course there were no boats. At least not that we could see. Once it was out of sight, the waters calmed. We decided to go to bed after that. Since then, none of us have seen the object again. Of course, it's become a story we like to tell people. We moved a lot when I was growing up, all over the country and in places which ranged from young to old and had lots of history. Lived in homes with multiple floors, condemned trailer houses with no electricity or running water, and everything in between. I tell you that to tell you this. I am not unaccustomed with the unfamiliar. My childhood was split between so many homes of such a wide variety that I never had the chance to develop a fear of the unknown. The sounds and feels of a new place have never scared me, until one time. We had moved to this brick and adobe house in eastern New Mexico. I was about 11 or 12 and lived there for about a week when I noticed a particular trend. The pantry door would rattle at the same time every night like clockwork. Honestly, it sounded like someone typing, but failing to open the door. My bedroom shared a wall with the kitchen, so I was essentially the only one in the house that heard it, but it drove me nuts once I noticed it. I asked my dad about it, and he said how it was probably the aircon and pressure differentials, that sort of thing. I didn't think anything of it, but that night I shut the aircon off, set a timer, and waited. The door rattled again like clockwork. It carried on for about half an hour or so, then stopped, and I went to sleep knowing it wasn't the air conditioning. The next day, I brought this up to my dad, who was understandably upset that I had shut off the AC and stayed up so late, but he was understanding of my need to know. His next theory was vibration from nearby traffic or a nearby railroad could be reaching some kind of resonance in that door frame. He was satisfied and sent me on my way. I was not satisfied. I couldn't isolate traffic and the railroad because I can't control those things. but I figured I would do another test. The night rolled around and I shut the AC off, then opened my bedroom window and listened for the train. I knew it couldn't be traffic, too regular, but the train tracks were relatively close and I knew from past experience I would be able to hear the train. The door rattled. I listened for it to stop, reset the AC, and closed my window. This time I didn't tell my dad. The next night, I decided a more aggressive approach. Before I continued, I should point out something about the house. Like so many older homes, it had an ever so slight lean. The sort of lean where if a door is not latched, it will slowly move further open or closed, depending on its position relative to this unfortunate axis. The pantry door, notably, was positioned such that if it were not latched fully, it would slowly open rather than close. So I set an alarm and waited till it was nearly time for the rattle to start. I went into the kitchen, turned on all the lights, opened the pantry door, and sat cross-legged on the floor to wait. Sure enough, the moment came. The pantry door opened wider than it normally would have in a sharp, jerking motion. Then it slammed hard enough to rattle the shelves, and it rattled harder than it had ever done before. It was like someone trying to get out of a locked room. I sat there in awe, watching the spectacle as my parents came up to see what the ruckus was, seeing the door and everything. I don't quite remember my parents' reactions. It was a whole lot of me being swept up and firmly guided to my parents' bedroom, where I was shortly joined by my sister and both parents. Over the next couple of days, Dad tried replacing the hinges, adding a lock, and eventually just taking the door off altogether. Never did learn what caused it. All I can say is that we had no other strange incidents like that at that house. I have often seen shapes in the dark that look like a hooded figure or like a black mass. I've always felt a little creeped out by them, but just figured it was my brain playing tricks, trying to fill in the blank space. I've also had sleep paralysis before, seen a ghost in a hat and trench coat, and have had items move right in front of me with witnesses. But this is something I've never had happen before. I woke up randomly 47 minutes ago at 3 a.m. like I do most nights. I noticed a black mass in the corner of my room. It stood up. It was 7 foot at least, with an oval-shaped head, pronounced shoulders, long arms, and equally long legs. It was thin, tall, and stood straight, just looking at me. Had no face, just a black void. It turned to the right, bent down, and I, at first calmly, asked my fiancée to turn on the light. Then it stood back up and walked to the right side of my room, my side of the bedroom. It leaned over the bed as though checking the sheets, then stood up again and walked to the bottom of the bed. At this point I'm going crazy, shouting, "Turn on your light!" as this thing starts crawling up the bed towards me. Then, once the light went on, it vanished, but I've been hiding under the covers and my fiancée has to bring a lamp in the room so I don't have to sit in the dark. I can't sleep with the light on, but right now I'm too scared. Can someone tell me what on earth I've just witnessed? And any suggestions are welcome on how I might get it to leave. So this was last summer. My friend and I are in the basement of my house. We decided to go up to the first floor. I clearly remember following her up the stairs. Up the stairs, I watch her turn left and then say, "Oh my God." And then I lose sight of her, as if she escaped the corner of my eye. I start to look around. Nothing. Call her name. Nothing. At this point, I'm getting freaked out. I search the first and second floor, yet no one's answering. I decide to go back to the basement, even though it makes no sense, as this was where we're coming from. That's where I found her. She's just lying there on the bed, not making a sound. I asked her, "What are you doing? Why didn't you answer when I called your name?" She says she decided to play a game. Not only has she never done that before, but why do I have these vivid memories of her turning left, saying, "Oh my God"? Of course, I'm someone to always question my perceptions first, but I have a feeling that my timeline shifted on that afternoon. My name is Melanie. I moved into my house about 7 months ago, and it was a disaster. I'm not the richest person, so there was a deal struck and I cleaned the house out from the previous tenants. I hadn't seen the place before I moved in. It was a desperate situation I would rather not dive into. When I moved in, there was expired canned food and expired candy waist high from the living room to the kitchen. Shit and used condoms on the floor. It was bad. Coal stove. I'm a single mom. I had no clue what I was doing. Very old, rigged together house. So the first thing I noticed was that in the basement there was a tunnel dug out that has a small turn. It's not very long. That leads to a small, circular tiny room. Only way I can explain it, maybe a small child could stand up in it, but I'm 5'2" and couldn't. All that is there is a light hanging from the middle of the ceiling. This is all just rock and cement. The only way I can explain the light is, in the brave little toaster when they go to the store with the other appliances, and that big lamp that sings. Pendant light? I can't decide if that's cool or dumb. I digress. I was using Facebook Messenger. I was sending a video of me playing a game on my laptop to my friend. It was only on my phone. It took up all the screen. Even my time and notifications. I checked all Facebook stories and opened tabs and nothing. I have no idea where this is, and I've never seen it before. It didn't appear on the computer, only on my phone. Okay, here's what you've all been waiting for. Me and my 15-year-old son were setting up the attic for his room. He recently decided to move up to the attic. I was always used for storage. There's a tiny cubby hole that we were clearing out. To the far left wall, the small end of the wall was carpeted. Thinking that was really strange, I ripped the carpet down and found boards, and there was a crack in between two of them. So I used a flashlight and looked inside, and there was a whole other room, bigger than the cubby hole that we were already in. Of course, me and him kicked the boards down like beasts. All that was in there was wooden shutters, wooden boards, pipes and debris, and a lot of insulation. I saw a piece of wood that looked strangely smooth and out of place. So I flipped it over and it was a Ouija board. I've done some research since, and it was a 1939 William Fuld mystifying oracle board. I didn't find the planchette with it, but I found that weird triangle thing. My 15-year-old son said, "Fuck this, I'm out," and left me there to be possessed. Since then, I've put the Ouija board on the mirror of my dresser as a decoration. Everybody keeps telling me to get rid of it and burn it. I don't want to. I don't feel anything evil of it. I kind of really feel a connection with it. I'm not trying to be all Reagan Captain Howdy here, but it's the truth. I also forgot to mention the weird things that have been happening. Normal things like toys going off or things going missing and reappearing. Recently, my friend and I, who are frequently here, have been seeing things. People. I saw a man twice. I can chalk the first one up to my mind playing tricks on me. It was a split second he was there. I looked at my phone and he was gone. But a week later, I was driving down a dark back road that was really windy. I live out in the boonies where there's nothing but woods everywhere. I was driving and of course paying attention because I had my son in the car. Not that I don't pay attention when it's just me. And there was nothing there. But when I looked in the rearview mirror, and I looked 3 separate times within the span of a few seconds, not 10 feet away was a man slowly walking away from the car in the middle of the side of the street I was driving on. He came out of absolutely nowhere, and there's no way he could have been there that fast. Not as close to the car as he was. He had a fedora/bowling hat looking thing on, and what looks like a suit jacket, and he was walking very slow. I saw him 3 separate times when I looked in the rearview mirror, and then he was gone. My 12-year-old son said he didn't see him. He didn't see the other man either. So I guess I really don't know what to do with all of this information, and I'm really new to all this. So please help me. I guess what I really want is information, especially on the video footage on what could possibly be going on in this house, or what could have been going on. Right, we're in this house for 7 years at this point. First encounters was hearing scratching in a vague androgynous voice from a door while I was babysitting my 3-year-old sister. My cat, which could have been the cause, wasn't there or anywhere near the door. Next, a week later, I was hearing hissing noises from the corners of my room, progressively getting closer to my bed. Then hearing the movement of things under my bed. A hurried search with a phone flashlight under the bed showed nothing. A week later, I saw a cat with the exact same eyes and fur pattern and colours as my cat on the roof, despite the fact she was cuddling me. As I turned to my cat and looked back, whatever it was gone. My brother heard a feminine voice say hello. Around a week later, along with me hearing a young 16 to 20 feminine voice saying calmly, "Stop," as I was about to masturbate. I obeyed their order. I'm certain it isn't our neighbours, as the voice was way too clear and originated from my room. Later, I saw the doppelganger of my cat again, staring at me from the door of my room, as I heard my real cat climb up the bunk bed and hear my brother confirm that it was my cat that climbed up. The other cat disappeared shortly after. To be clear, I haven't told my brother about the second voice encounter. I'm 15 and my brother is 16. My father has encountered a few oddities, such as a doppelganger of the cat walk into areas of the house and disappear, while the real one is in immediate proximity to us. He's also encountered a stick that rapidly begun spinning and flying around the room that he was in and fucking disappeared. Who? What are they? Am I safe around them? This all happens as soon as I was abandoned by every person I knew, or is it coincidental? It seemed to have happened on a weekly basis. Maybe a year or so after living there, I woke up in the middle of the night to what I thought was my brother coming into my room. He used to do that often. I kept asking what he wanted. He just kept getting closer to me. Then I finally turned a light on and the weird shadow disappeared. I know sometimes when we're tired and are just waking up, we can see things that aren't there, but I was genuinely so shook up about that. I made my brother come sleep next to me in the living room for a few days. About 6 months after that, my neighbour took his wife's life and then his. I know she was really sick, and it was probably really upsetting to see her get worse and worse. Not that that justifies murder, but I tried to understand. The day after that, my friend came over to my house while I wasn't home. They waited for me, but they told me they felt this horrible feeling driving down my street. And after a couple of minutes, they saw something that looked like a big shadow out of their rear-view mirror. They got so scared, they just left after that. I told them something happened to my neighbours, but I didn't tell them what happened. A couple months after that, we were watching a friend's dog. She's a small dog, but she's protective. When she hears the door, she barks. I was home alone one day and sitting in the front room, right in front of the door. I was just sitting on the floor petting the dogs when I heard and saw the door being shaken. I've not ever heard the wind do that, and it wasn't a windy day. There are big windows in the front room, so you can see if someone was there. The dogs went crazy. My pit bull, that never barks at anything, started growling and barking. Just to make sure, I got up and looked. I also live on a private road on multiple acres. No one hardly ever comes down there. I didn't see anyone or anything. Those are really the only big scary things that have happened, other than things randomly falling or curtains moving with no heat or AC on, but I feel like those could be justified. One minor thing that has been happening to me lately is really creepy dreams. I would just like to clarify that I'm not really scared of ghosts. I don't think about paranormal stuff often. My first dream, long story short, a ghost tried to strangle me. It felt like a minute in my dream, and then I woke up gasping for air. I tried to justify it by thinking maybe I just stopped breathing in my sleep for a few seconds. The second one, my house was super haunted. The ghosts kept trying to scare me out of the house. The third one, a ghost tried to strangle me again, and I kept telling my family something was trying to hurt me, but no one would believe me. My fourth one was not exactly paranormal related, but someone locked me in a house and lit it on fire. It was kind of scary. I had no way out. This has all happened in the past 2 weeks. I forgot, I've also been having lucid dreams lately. I've never in my 20 years of life had a lucid dream or tried to control my dreams. I know that an older lady and her husband lived here before us. I know she passed away at a hospital or nursing home, but I don't know about her husband. There was an agreement that they couldn't tell us the history of the house, same with the one next door where the murder-suicide happened. I feel like my new neighbours probably know what happened, but I know none of us are going to go up on them and be like, "Hey, did you know someone was murdered in the new house you just bought?" Friends and I decided to play with our Ouija board. Not our first time, and we have contacted spirits before. Personally, I don't believe in the paranormal as much as I'd like to. I'm just pretty skeptical with anything that doesn't have proof. Even after tonight, I still don't know what I believe. Anyway, we're playing and instantly get in contact. We end up talking to her for almost 2 hours and learn quite a few things. Female. Name, Jayadi. Born 1938. Died 1956. Born and raised in Utah. Hispanic. 5'10", 96 pounds. Had first suicide attempt, overdose, when she was 14. Second fatal attempt, slitting wrists when she was 18. She was in a foster home her entire life with over 40 other kids, and was neglected her entire life due to her race, weight, and height. She said her caretakers didn't feed her because of her race. She was bullied a lot for the same things. Now, the entire time we were talking to her, she was very fixated on me in particular. She said that she was my guardian angel and that she was watching over me because of my mental illness and because of how sad I am. I asked if there was any way she could make herself known to me. She told me she's visited me before in my dreams, that she's disguised as nature and hands. This is something she told me a lot, that I would find her in my dreams. She also made sure to continually tell me that she's my protector, that she's here to protect me. We asked her many questions on where and how we could find her. A lot of them to which she replied, "Can't say." But she did tell us that she's buried in a cemetery and she has a headstone. She also kept saying things like, "Find me." She said this a lot. And we'd ask her what she would do if we found her. She'd simply reply, "Free you." To that we'd ask, "Free us from what?" And she'd always reply with, "Sad." I do have a few more minuscule details about this occurrence and can tell anyone who's interested or thinks they can be of any help. Again, not quite sure if I believe in superstitious things like this, but I do feel like we did contact someone. It felt like she was in good spirits, and I was actually glad to talk to her. But I have no knowledge of anything paranormal and can't be sure of anything. Again, any input would be amazing. So my grandmother was taken by ambulance to the hospital a few days ago due to an infection that was spreading in her body. I had tried calling her multiple times that day and never got a hold of her, so I asked my friend to stop by her house and check on her. She was throwing up and talking about how my deceased grandfather wouldn't come in the house from the garage to help her shower, and her deceased mother was just sitting on the couch ignoring her. Turns out she was in septic shock, so the delusions make sense. She's doing much better now, by the way. My father is at her house after spending time with her at the hospital, and is sending me the list of her medications while standing in the kitchen. The back door opens to the kitchen area. He very obviously hears the screen to the back door open, and turns his head expecting to see me or the friend who checked on my grandmother earlier in the day, opening the back door. But no one opens the door, and he never hears the screen door close. 30 seconds go by, and he decides to pop his head outside. The only thing he sees is a car parked at the stop sign on the side road 300 yards away that just sat there for a few minutes. The car then makes a U-turn to go back down the lake road, which is a dead end where they had come from. But while doing so, pauses when the headlights are facing my grandmother's house for 30 seconds. So did someone run up to the house and open the back door from this car, and the car was waiting on them and looking for them with the headlights? Even after hearing this, I decided to stay the night to take care of my grandmother's cat while she's in the hospital. I clearly remember before bed her walker being in the bathroom, where she always keeps it to help her take a shower. When I woke up in the morning, the walker was in the middle of the kitchen. So is my grandfather looking for my grandmother? What explanations do you guys have for these stories? Because we're at a loss. I will add that we've experienced weird occurrences in this house for 30 plus years, but two very obvious things happened the day my grandfather went to hospital after she saw our dead relatives. I live in a small 2-bedroom house. It's cozy but comfortable. I've lived here for about 2 years. Things started off harmless enough. Doors were always being closed that were left open, creaks in the house, random things seemed to be moved, nothing that could immediately draw fear. My girlfriend said that she felt like she had eyes on her when I was at work and claimed that she was constantly seeing something moving towards the back of the house. All doubts sort of got erased when we walked in the house one day and the back room door slammed shut. I thought we might have an intruder, so I loaded up my pistol and went in, but there was nothing there. Finally, we just decided to have the house blessed. Well, that didn't help. My girlfriend left to take care of her dad, and I was the one who had to endure the house. I started experiencing weird things like my laundry being thrown around, and once my boots sitting on the kitchen counter. The house is double windowed because the old lady who owned it before me was really paranoid, so it's nearly impossible to break in. It's doable, but unlikely. To me, I noticed things were getting increasingly weird when I closed the door that leads from the living room to the kitchen. Anytime it was closed, something from the other side would try and open it. I thought this was just airflow until I started noticing that the knob was twisting. It was the equivalent of a toddler trying to open the door, but it would try in increments of 3. 2 light pulls and then 1 hard yank. That's when I figured I was dealing with a haunting, like there was officially no more doubt. One night, after working a 16-hour day, the door started pulling aggressively. I was already in a funky mood, so I got up and stormed into the kitchen, where I started screaming at whatever the hell is in the house. I was so damn frustrated that I said, "If you want to freaking go, then we'll go." As I walked back into the living room, a sugar jar flew off the counter and hit my stove, which was only about a foot to the left of me. I was scared, but I stayed in the house. Next came issues while I was asleep. I would wake up about 10 minutes to 3 in the morning, where I could get the impression that somebody was standing behind the door of the kitchen. I would freeze from being so scared. One night while I was asleep, I actually heard footsteps running towards me, and when I woke up, the door to the kitchen was wide open. This would be the first time that the door was actually successfully opened. I also have a small desk statue of the sirens from Greek mythology. While home one night, I heard a thud in the back room and found that the statue had been decapitated. The base of the figure was still on my desk, but the heads were on the ground. Also, while in that same room, I was checking something on my computer and something behind me slammed into the wall. It sounded like somebody had taken their palm and just hit it really hard. I was almost numb to it by then. The last encounter I had, maybe 5 days ago, was when I got called to work about 3:30 in the morning. I was pulling out of my driveway when I saw something walking by the window. When I did a double take, I saw what looked like a shadowy figure staring back at me. I get the chills even speaking about it. I plan on moving due to work, but I want this settled. I don't want this to pass on to the next group of folks that roll into the house. I don't really know what to do. I know it wouldn't be my problem, but the last thing I want is for a family to move in and have to deal with this. Thoughts? I was able to get into contact with a medium in a nearby city, but I kicked him out of the house. He was delusional. I won't get into him much here, it was just a waste of time. I did, however, find the previous owner's granddaughter, who I wasn't even aware existed. She agreed to a phone conversation where some things were told to me that may add to some form of answer. She mentioned that when her great-grandmother lived in the house, her mother had hired a live-in nanny, who stayed in what is now my home office, which is where we saw the door slamming. Not sure if that's an actual connection, but I found out that her name was Miss Alice, and she was someone who claimed to be a devout Catholic, but in actuality was a voodoo practitioner by night. Apparently, this woman made the children in the house pray to God over black candles. When this happened, the lady who had the place before me would claim to see a large African American woman standing in the doorway, watching her sleep. This would be the door between my kitchen and my living room. A few other things were mentioned, such as them hearing scratches along the side of the house, seeing big spiders crawling around on the beds that weren't really there, and seeing someone's face peering through the windows. Some of this I can somewhat rationalize, but I can also see how it's applicable. This is just the most recent info I've had. One dream, I was at an outdoor assembly and my principal had this distinctly paisley suit on, talking about natural disaster safety. I wore new white shoes in this, standing on a yellow line belonging to a basketball court marking. A girl from another grade passed out in the middle of assembly. Ambulances were called, and I woke up. Upon waking, I was in an immense haze, almost like I couldn't remember what to do next. It was short, and while I remembered the dream during the haze, I quickly forgot. I was a kid after all. Weeks later, I was standing at an outdoor assembly. I had just gotten new shoes. I remember looking down at them and getting this sense of deja vu. My mom was a volunteer that day, so I tugged on her arm. I told her what I saw in my dream, the suit, the girl, and she told me that wasn't going to happen. When my principal walked out in that suit and when that girl fainted, my mom regarded it as a strange coincidence. That's how it always happened. Dream, sudden waking, forgetting, haze time passing. Deja vu in the event. And remembering, but only once it was triggered by the deja vu. Lately, I've been experiencing more intense dreams when this happens. It feels as if the older I get, the more experience I have, the more significant the dreams are. The less I check myself and remind myself that this happens, the worse they get. Had a dream of my soulmate friend passing before it happened. Had a dream the first time I told my current partner that I love them. I saw my cousin nearly drive us off the road in another. I'm not sure what to do, and I am open to conversation. I don't know what this is, but it's beginning to get the best of me, and I fear it because I don't acknowledge or practice it. Is it a glitch? Paranormal? So a few years ago, I was sitting on the edge of my bed in the middle of the night. I was the only one awake. First, I heard a scratching sound by the top corner of my room beside the door. It startled me, but I ignored the experience, made me a little paranoid. An hour later, I heard 3 knocks on my door, like someone tapped the door with their finger. At the time, I thought it was my mother coming to tell me to go to sleep. She used to do that, but opens the door after knocking, but this time the door never opened. I also found it odd that not only she didn't open the door, but she didn't even say anything. At this point I was frozen in fear and made me very aware how quiet it was in the house. I also never heard footsteps walking away from my room or towards my room. I'd also like to point out that my house is very old, and you can hear very well if someone is walking. I asked my mother the next day if she had knocked on my door, but she said she didn't. Personally, I'm very creeped out by this still, years later, and my house has always creeped me out and still is. My boyfriend has also confirmed the creepy aura it gives off as well as my sister, having creepy experiences in the same corner of my room. Didn't help at all that I was left alone in my house by myself most of my childhood, probably traumatizing me a little. Well, this started happening to me about 6 to 9 months ago. It turns out that all my life when I went to bed to sleep at night in my room, I always had a little trouble falling asleep. I'm a nervous person, and it is logical that I always find it a bit difficult to fall asleep, although sometimes I do it quickly. Several months ago, something out of the ordinary started to happen to me. Well, first, I always close the windows of my room with the curtains because there's a beacon of light in the street that always shines in my eyes at night, and that bothers me and doesn't let me sleep. Then I close the door of my room, first to avoid noise because sometimes my brothers move around at night, doing things, and that also doesn't let me sleep. And besides, I close the door to avoid any light from the dining room or kitchen at home. Once I close the window and the door of my room, I'm in total darkness. Several months ago, I realized that when I close my eyes and open them, small, round, orange lights appear that quickly disappear when I open my eyes. This never happened to me throughout my life. I always slept well and nothing or no light interfered with me. I also do not consume any type of substances or smoke. For more than 7 months, I thought it was because of my mind or something related to it. A little over a month ago, my perception completely changed about these lights, because when I was trying to sleep, I emphasized trying because I wasn't sleepy. I open my eyes and one of these round orange lights does not disappear, but stays for 2 or 3 seconds. And I saw it well, and I was sure of what I saw. From that moment, I knew that what I saw was something completely real, and I did not imagine it. Since then, these lights began to appear very little. Sometimes they appear one night, and for several days they do not appear.